Something that's been on my mind ever since chapter 13 of TBV Vortex is how Matsuri even found out that Boruto had an accomplice in the first place. What exactly was this research she did?
Research. Yes, research.
How did she know to check Orochimaru's hideout when she ran into Gaara and Shinki? At first glance, it might seem like we've been hit with a heaping dose of plot-convenient deus ex machina nonsense, but it turns out the answer has been right in front of us all along. Believe it or not, Matsuri can read minds, and not just Matsuri, but Moegi too.
What? I'm out, man.
We don't know exactly how this ability works or its full limits, but we do have a broad sense of what it might be. We've seen Matsuri use it at least once before, and likely again while investigating Boruto's ally, and perhaps even a third time. I know it sounds far-fetched, but we'll go through all the evidence. Normally I'd like to start with Matsuri's use of the ability, but this ability sounds so absurd that I have no choice but to start with Moegi, or else you'll think this is a really late April Fool's Day video. Diving right into it, if you recall, back in early part 1 when Kodachi was still writing the script, we used to get these databook profile cards on various characters, their stats, and their jutsu, and this is actually how everyone knew that Moegi had wood style, even though she's never used a single wood style jutsu in the manga or anime. The jutsu were written on this databook card. Now understandably, everything else on this profile has been overshadowed by these wood style jutsu, but there are two things on here that I find to be even more interesting, especially given the context of Matsuri. The first is the fact that, according to this profile, one of Moegi's primary skills is her sensory abilities, which is supported by her extremely high sensory stats. In fact, Moegi has the highest perception stats that I can find, meaning her sensory abilities are very good. And interestingly enough, the final jutsu on this databook card is called the Kanpa no Jutsu. There are some funny translations like the penetration jutsu, which you can watch us find on the podcast at the video link below, but the most accurate translation would be something along the lines of the mind reading technique, the thought reading technique, or the mind penetration technique. Again, we don't know exactly how this jutsu works, but the name implies that Moegi has some ability to read thoughts. And for anyone wondering, I can confirm that this is not the crystal ball technique Hiruzen uses where he basically gets the Senrigan. That jutsu is called the telescope technique, or the To'o Megane no Jutsu. Where it gets really interesting, however, is when you consider Matsuri's feats in dialogue. If you recall, in chapter 5 of TBV Vortex, Matsuri was able to sense the emotions of Konohamaru and Team 10 when they stood in front of Moegi's tree. Understandably, the default assumption would be that all the Shinju can sense anything around their tree, but it's worth noting that, so far, Matsuri is the only Shinju to show this ability. I understand the context isn't exactly the same, but it's not like we saw Hidari sense Boruto and Koji when they were hanging around Sasuke's tree right after the Shinju tried to devour them, and we haven't seen Ryu sense anything through Shinki's tree yet either. It's just Matsuri. Now that could just be coincidence, but if it's not, that means Matsuri has a special ability that allows her to sense through Moegi's tree, which explains how she was able to sense the emotions of Konohamaru and Team 10. Similarly, Matsuri was the only Shinju to mention Code's life experience, personality, and fate in just her first encounter with Code. This is especially impressive when you consider the fact that Moegi doesn't even know Code. She probably knows he exists, but she's never met him, unlike Bug who knew Code personally, and yet even Mamushi doesn't seem to have a full memory and understanding of who Code is. This then leads us to the original question. How did Matsuri even find out that Boruto had an accomplice in the first place? What exactly was this research she did? And how did she know to check Orochimaru's hideout when she ran into Gaara and Shinki? Based on her reaction to seeing that dead toad in chapter 16, where she noted that it was a clue leading to Boruto, I suspect that Matsuri found Orochimaru's hideout by tracking the chakra of one of Koji's toads to that location. Alternatively, she may have read some of Koji's thoughts through one of his toads, in which case, she must have noticed either the toad on Boruto's shoulder or the one on the ground when she first met Boruto in chapter 4, which shouldn't be that difficult for someone with sensory powers, especially since that toad was literally yelling at Boruto to leave. This would explain her fixation on Orochimaru's hideouts in these toads, It would also explain how she made such a ridiculous amount of progress so quickly. This doesn't explain why Gaara was there, but my only guess is that they found a different trail to Boruto, or they just follow Matsuri there. And based on their limited dialogue in chapter 15, I think they just follow Matsuri there not knowing who she was or what she was after. I can't say much more than that since we haven't seen much from Matsuri, or even Moegi for that matter, and we haven't received an explanation behind her research or the trail she's been following. But let me know what you think. How do you think Matsuri found out that Boruto had an accomplice? But what do you think her research was? And how do you think she knew to check Orochimaru's hideout? Let me know in the comments below. Watch this video here for more of my content, subscribe and like the video to help me against the YouTube algorithm, and turn on notifications so you don't miss out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.